We've established that the sous vide can be used to reheat your barbecue leftovers and does an excellent job at that. But the question is, can you use this to actually cook a meal, like say a pork tenderloin? Yes, you can, and I'm going to show you today on Greg the Grilling Guy. Today is a pork tenderloin day. Now, the pork tenderloin, it's almost like a beef tenderloin. It's a really, really soft, delicate part of the pig. It comes from the loin region, which is not what you think. It's seen here on the chart. And we're going to prep this thing and we're going to cook it in the sous vide today. Now, sous vide, I've actually done a separate video on. I will link to it up here. I'm not going to go deep into the whole theory behind sous vide other than just telling you how to cook this particular piece of pork. So pork bean protein, we're going to do what we always do. We're going to start out by dry brining this. And same thing, bit of kosher salt. I'll leave it in the fridge probably just a couple hours because this is basically going to brine as it cooks as well. So let's get the salt on there and we'll talk it through. Now, the pork tenderloin, when you cook pork, typically I would say cook that to 150, 155. If I'm doing this on a barbecue, that's kind of the recommendation by the FDA. However, when you cook something in a sous vide, it's essentially cooking in a warm water bath, and you're getting through the danger zone fairly quickly, and it's going to maintain that heat. So I'm actually going to cook it probably more in the 135, 140. To me, that's still going to be a little pink inside. It's going to be extremely tender, extremely juicy, and that's right where I want it to be. So we've got the brine on here. I'm going to put it in the fridge for a couple hours, and we'll come back and we're going to put some seasoning on it, because it is going to cook for probably 4 hours in the sous vide. You could cook it for longer. You could put it in before you go to work in the morning and let it go. I'm just going to do it for 4 hours just because that's kind of where I like it. And I have the time to do so right now. So let's get this thing brined up and then we'll talk about the next steps momentarily. Now, as I mentioned, for today, I'm going to be using my tub style sous vide cooker. And really the reason being I have the time to do the cook using it. It takes a lot longer to heat up because it's basically heating up off of a disc at the bottom that's just transferring heat into the tub and heating the water up. So it takes a bit longer, maybe doesn't hold the temperature as consistent when you first put the meat in, but because I have the time, I'll put it in there and that way it's not tying up a pot and I can just set it and forget it. So far as getting the sous vide set up, we're just going to take it, fill it with water. There is a fill line in there. You're going to kind of get a feel for whether you can go just slightly above or below. Obviously, the more water you add in there, colder water that you put in initially, it's going to take a longer time to get itself up to temperature. But I'm kicking this on. I want to eat around, say, 5 p.m. today. It's 12:30. I'm going to fill it. It will take getting to 145. It might take an hour for this thing to actually heat up to temperature, which is why I'm kicking it off now. I mentioned the pork I would cook for 4 hours. That's probably not accurate. It's probably maybe 3.5. But once it gets to temperature, it can sit there for several hours. I would say the minimum you want to cook it is 1 hour. However, anything over 1 hour, it's just basically going to maintain. And that's kind of the nice thing about sous vide. You can't overcook it. You can destroy it if you leave it in for days. But I've heard of people doing briskets for 2 to 3 days in a sous vide. So I'm not really that worried about it. Like I say, I could do it in as short as an hour, but I'll probably give it 2 to 3. It just needs to kind of break the connective tissue down a little bit better and give it a slightly better consistency and chew. So let's get this thing filled with water and we'll take it to the next step. With the water filled up to the max line, the unit powered on, we can now set the desired temperature. I want this to cook to 145, so I'm going to bump that up to 145. I'm going to hit time. And it's going to tell me by default it's set to cook for 3 hours. I want this to be closer to a 4-hour cook, so I'm going to bump that up to 4 hours. With the time set, hit start, and it's going to start to preheat. Now, if I hit temperature, it'll tell me the water is 82 degrees. I need that to climb up to 145, so this is going to be a while for this thing to preheat. When I say cook to 4 hours, at 4 hours, it will send an alarm letting me know that the cook is completed. However, it doesn't actually turn the heat off. It will keep it warm, so you don't need to be there right at the 4-hour point. So this is a great convenience. The pork's been in the fridge for a couple hours now, and you can see it's absorbed most of the salt at this point. So I want this to warm up a bit before I dump it into the sous vide. You don't have to do that. It just obviously takes a little bit longer to cook. I mean, I have 4 hours on this one, so I have plenty of time, but I'm going to put a bit of rub on here. This is just a basic rub. It's got a bit of brown sugar, paprika, garlic, dehydrated onion, garlic, salt and pepper. So it's just a really basic rub. Now, normally I would put duck fat on this, but because I'm going to be cooking inside of a bag, I'm not as worried about a crust or anything on it, so I'm not looking for it to hold. But I am going to put this on probably 30 to 40 minutes before I put it in, so that as the salt continues to absorb in, it's going to draw some of this flavor in as well, and then we'll get into actually prepping this thing in the bag. With the rub all over the pork loin, I'm going to take just a basic gallon freezer bag that you can buy at a grocery store. I'm not going to worry about going through the whole process of vacuum sealing these, because if you put the pork loin into the bag and then you slowly submerge it into the water, it's going to push the air out as it goes in. So get the pork loin in here. Sometimes, depending on what I'm cooking, if I was cooking beef or something, I might put in a little bit of Worcestershire sauce or even a bit of barbecue sauce in there. Because the pork is going to do just fine on its own, I'm not going to bother to put anything in there. I'm just going to take it like this. When the sous vide is ready, I will submerge it into the sous vide and it will start to cook. So we'll go through that process when we get to that. So now that the sous vide is up to temperature, we're going to take the pork loin. We're going to slowly drop it into the water. And as it's being dropped into the water, the air is actually being pushed out of the bag, and it's essentially making its own vacuum seal. So you just want to make sure that you get enough air out that the food is going to sit down towards the bottom. This does have a rack you could put in, but the pork loin is going to be heavy enough that it will sit down there. Once I've got most of the air out of the bag, I seal it off, and then I usually just hang it over the edge and then put the lid back on, so I know I don't need to worry about it falling in or water getting into the top if it doesn't make a proper seal. Sometimes that does happen with the Ziploc. So now that that's in there, it's going to sit for 4 hours. There's no checking it, there's no doing anything. You just set it and forget it. 4 hours later, you come back and it's ready, and that's where we're going to pick this up. The pork loin is done. I know it's done to 145 degrees, which is more or less where I want it. But the final step is to put a sear in here. So I've got a cast iron pot that I've been preheating out here. And I'm going to put this in just to basically form a crust on the actual loin. Not going to have it sit in there for too long, just enough to firm up the skin. Pork's come in from the cast iron. I've had it resting in the barbecue bag for about 10 minutes now. Let the juices redistribute, so it should be ready to cut. So let's see what we've got here. All right, it's got a nice crust on it. Definitely feels tender. That looks good. There's still a bit of pink inside of there. You can feel the tenderness. That's good. That's nice and tender. Let's get this plated and see what we've got for dinner. All right, so we've got it plated here. We've got some pork medallions, spinach, a little bit of beans, and a cob of corn. It's going to be a great meal. So I'm going to get it eating this. Thank you everyone for watching. Certainly appreciate it. If you like what you saw, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. I will put a description to everything that I used in the cook today down in the details. So if you want to order a thing off Amazon, if you wouldn't mind clicking that link, it really helps us out. Thank you everyone. And again, I'm Greg the Grilling Guy telling you, grill it real good.